I have been doing surveillance for over 16 years, and I have had plenty of opportunities to fail while doing surveillance over those 16 years too. I have also seen many private investigators mess up big time while out there on surveillance, and that is why I made this list of the top 5 reasons most private investigators fail while on surveillance. The first big challenge to overcome is quite simply maintaining a covert observation point or stationary position. Staying unseen and unnoticed while getting video, taking photos, and gathering critical intel is crucial for any stakeout. Any suspicion, not just from the subject of the investigation, but any suspicion from anyone like neighbors, the mailman, delivery drivers, the police, anyone can jeopardize the entire investigation. Today's modern technology, including everything from regular security cameras to doorbell cams, adds a huge layer of complexity by simply making the public more and more aware and observant of what is going on. Yes, I know that same technology is also distracting the public at the same time, but the problem is, while they are staring at their phone, at their laptop, or their tablet, when they get that camera alert on those devices, it is right there in front of them, and those alerts are very hard to ignore. I often see people shortly after pulling into a neighborhood looking out their windows or the front door. And what I usually also notice is those people that do take those quick sneak peeks out the window often have some sort of security camera on their property. And in today's world, it takes only one snoopy neighbor to blow the PI's cover by alerting the entire neighborhood to the presence of a suspicious vehicle through a neighborhood watch program or some social media sites. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. The first step to ensure you can stay covert is to blend in, and the first step to blending in starts with your vehicle. A good surveillance investigator will have a good surveillance vehicle that is inconspicuous and doesn't draw attention. I always prefer what I refer to as a soccer mom vehicle. A standard crossover SUV or minivan is usually best, but the color makes a difference too. You want quiet colors like gray or white. Black can work too, as long as it doesn't look like the stereotypical surveillance vehicle, all black with dark tinted windows. I learned this lesson early on in my career as a PI. One of my first vehicles was a black Pontiac Grand Prix. I love that car. It was a 2-door sedan, and I could lay the driver's seat completely flat and very easily roll into the back seat or just sit there laying on my back as I was below the window. I had gotten very dark tinting window on the side and the rear windows. And man, with those red racing stripes on the side, that car looked quite slick. Yeah, I was proud of it until I realized people were always noticing my car when I was out on surveillance. Everyone noticed it, not just the subjects of my investigation. And when they noticed, well, they noticed it. It was quite obvious when they saw that car at the second store that they went to, or when they arrived back at home. It just stood out way too much. I got many friendly waves from many not so friendly surveillance subjects, to be sure. So I only had that car for a short period because I was always getting noticed. You also need to be aware of what type of equipment you are using too when it comes to staying covert. If you're going into a grocery store and trying to get video of your subject with a regular video camera, well, people will notice that right away. Getting video with a regular cell phone while on foot surveillance has plenty of challenges too, as you can't just be walking around with your phone up shooting video like you're at some type of a family event. I myself have several covert cameras at my disposal that are made especially for foot surveillance. My favorite one is a cell phone cam, but it is actually a covert camera that looks just like a cell phone. Instead of shooting video out the back, it has a camera on the top, so you can just hold it in your hand or on your side, just like you're texting or typing on your cell phone. I can even see what the camera is video recording right on the screen too. My second go-to covert camera is a key fob camera. Again, I can just hold it in my hand like I do a set of keys and go walking around and get video all day long. And I can set these covert cameras on top of a table or a box in a shopping cart or a countertop if necessary. But an even more important factor in blending in while on surveillance is strategic positioning. You need to carefully choose vantage points that offer clear views while minimizing exposure. I would suggest utilizing natural covers like trees, bushes, fences, and parked cars. I usually try to park 1 to 2 blocks away from my subject's location, and when possible, be facing the subject's location and facing the most likely direction they will go when they leave. If I can't do that, then I will opt to be pointed facing the most likely direction they will travel and watch out my rear window or rear view mirrors. This isn't the most ideal, as it means the subject will drive right past my surveillance vehicle, but sometimes it's the only option. The second biggest challenge I have seen for most PIs on surveillance is maintaining legal and ethical boundaries. You see, private investigators have no special powers, no special authority. In fact, given the licensing requirements in most states, we have an even higher standard in many ways that we are held to. We have to ensure that we operate within the bounds of the law and we always respect everyone's privacy rights while gathering evidence. Crossing these ethical lines can easily lead to legal repercussions, not to mention it can ruin a PI's reputation in a heartbeat. The easiest thing to do to ensure you stay ethical is to simply understand and obey the laws and regulations regarding surveillance, recording video and audio, and evidence admissibility. If you don't understand these laws, then I suggest you consult with legal counsel so you know what you can and cannot do. One easy way is to look at your PI license requirements and regulations. Most PI licensing laws have sections that pertain to this. One huge part of ethical behavior is knowing what you can and can't do while recording video. Everyone has a reasonable expectation of privacy in certain areas of their home, and if you are sticking cameras up over privacy fences or shooting video through a residential window, you are more than likely violating their reasonable rights to privacy. One surveillance challenge PIs face that most people never ever think about is dealing with unpredictability. You see, surveillance often involves long hours of sitting, waiting, and watching with no guarantee of obtaining the desired results or any results for that matter. Surveillance subjects may change their regular routines. What worked last week might not work this week. Weather conditions can interfere greatly with any investigation. I have had cases where it started raining or snowing so hard I couldn't see my subject's residence even if I was parked directly in front of the house. And snow, well, big snowstorms can leave you stranded in a neighborhood very quickly, and having someone come to tow you out will make you stand out for sure. The biggest solution for unpredictability is to always be flexible and adaptable. Make sure you are prepared to adjust surveillance plans based on changing circumstances. The biggest thing to remember when things suddenly change is to remain calm and resourceful, and make sure you think through the what ifs before and during surveillance so you have some sort of a plan in mind when the plans need to change. Another part of that unpredictability is simply not knowing what, when, or if anything will happen. You need to practice patience and persistence if you are going to be successful as a surveillance investigator. Don't give up easily, and always be willing to invest the time necessary to gather evidence. One of the biggest challenges I have seen that makes so many PIs fail at surveillance and fail at being a PI in general is managing time and resources. Surveillance can be time-consuming and costly, as it might involve extensive travel while on mobile surveillance, and it requires specialized equipment, and many times the time requirement may go well beyond what you initially planned. For instance, you might be planning a standard 8-hour surveillance shift from 6 a.m. until 2 p.m. But then your subject ends up driving up to the mountains for a ski trip, or heads to the beach for a company party, or whatever. You need to make a decision. Do you stay on the beach, the mountaintop, the ball game, and continue to work the case and gather more evidence? Or do you call it a day because your 8 hours are up? In most cases, the client is going to expect you to stay on the job if the subject is active. Don't worry, they'll pay you for your time, but they will have that expectation. And if you overbook yourself or need to leave right away at 2 o'clock for whatever reason, well, it will not look good to the client and it can jeopardize your entire investigation. What if something happened after you left that, if captured on video, would have exonerated the subject of your investigation? Well, did you really have to leave early, or did you stop working once you saw evidence that was contrary to what you wanted or thought you would get? These questions on the stand are real. Not to mention, your client is probably not going to use you very much if you are just an 8-hour investigator. I had a case one time where the subject left his residence 7 hours into the investigation. I then followed him clear across the state and into a neighboring state. That follow was an additional 7 hours, and even then I still had to locate and wait for an investigator in that state to relieve me before I could leave. And I had an 8-hour drive back home, so I ended up having to stay overnight and leave the next day. Now, the client did pay for all of my time and mileage and reimbursed my expenses, but the big thing was that I was able to reschedule work around the needs for the job that I was on. I know you can't always do this, but with careful planning and some strategic thought when it comes to scheduling work, you can come up with ways to overcome these challenges. Now, the number one, the biggest challenge of all for most private investigators doing surveillance is managing stress and burnout. I can guarantee you one thing, surveillance will lead to long hours, high pressure, and huge emotional toll dealing with these types of investigations. Chasing people at high speeds and high volume traffic, following people into shopping malls, grocery stores, office buildings, and trying to stay covert, calm, and collected, and get the money shot day in and day out can most definitely lead to stress and burnout. The biggest way to overcome these stresses that lead to burnout as a surveillance investigator is to maintain your physical and your mental well-being. You must prioritize healthy habits like regular exercise, adequate sleep, and a balanced diet. It is so easy to live off of cheeseburgers, chocolate shakes, and 5 hours of shut-eye for a while. But when it catches up to you, it's like slamming into a brick wall at 100 miles an hour. Make sure you schedule ample time off between jobs. Make sure you aren't always scheduling things back to back. And make sure you run your PI business to be profitable, not to be busy. That is the real crux of the issue. Most PIs are busy all the time, but only profitable some of the time. This leads to frustration, a need to work even harder, and burnout. If you want to know the tricks to running a profitable PI business without burning out, then watch this video.